The first thing Evelyn Carter remembered was the sound of her husband's prescription bottle rolling across the bank's marble floor. The second was a young teller looking straight through her, like 74 years of living had somehow turned Evelyn into part of the furniture. The third was the security guard placing one hand near her elbow and saying, "Ma'am, you need to leave," while $6 and $12 of medicine stood between her husband and another night of pain. Evelyn had never been thrown out of anywhere in her life. Not a restaurant, not a church meeting, not even the county fair the summer she accidentally brought home somebody else's prize-winning pie and didn't realize it until the blue ribbon fell out of the box. But there she was, standing beneath the cold white lights of Northbridge Community Bank, trying to hold together a paper envelope that had split down one side while her documents slid across the floor. Her driver's license landed near a man's polished shoe, her electric bill stopped beneath a chair, and an old photograph of her husband Raymond in his army uniform spun once before settling face up beside the security desk. Evelyn bent down too quickly. The room tilted, and for one awful second she thought she might pass out right there in front of everyone. A few people turned to look, some with concern, some with curiosity, and one young man raised his phone as if her humiliation had become the most interesting thing he had seen all afternoon. Nobody moved to help. That was the part she would remember later, not the teller's sharp voice or the guard's hand near her arm, but the way a room full of decent people suddenly became very busy studying their shoes. Evelyn had walked into that bank 40 minutes earlier, believing the hardest part of her day would be getting home before Raymond's next dose. She had been wrong. The morning had started quietly in their little house on Laurel Street, the same two-bedroom ranch Evelyn and Raymond had bought in 1983, when the wallpaper was orange, the furnace coughed like an old smoker, and every room smelled faintly of the previous owner's beagle. They had raised 2 children there, buried 3 dogs, replaced the roof twice, and argued for nearly 4 decades about whether the thermostat should be set at 68 or 70. Raymond always wanted 70. Evelyn always said sweaters were cheaper than heating oil. Lately, she had been setting it at 70 without saying a word. Cancer had thinned Raymond down in ways Evelyn still could not get used to. His shoulders, once broad enough to carry both their children at the same time, now disappeared beneath a gray cardigan. His hand shook when he lifted his coffee. Even his voice had changed, softer and rougher, as though every sentence had to climb uphill before it reached the room. That morning, Dr. Patel had called just after 9. Raymond's latest blood work had not been good, and the medication he had been taking was no longer controlling the pain the way it should. There was a new prescription available at Bellman's pharmacy, but insurance would not approve it until the following week. The cash price was $612. Evelyn wrote the number on the back of a grocery receipt, although she did not need to. It had already burned itself into her mind. $612 was more than half their monthly grocery budget. It was also less than what they had in savings, and that was what savings were for, she told herself. Not cruises, not fancy furniture, not one of those refrigerators that could tell you the weather, but days when the person you loved was hurting and money could help. Bellman's closed at 5:30. Evelyn had looked at the clock. 9:23. Plenty of time, she thought. That was before she learned that in the modern world. Plenty of time, she thought. That was before she learned that in the modern world, plenty of time could disappear behind a password you had never created. Raymond was sitting in his favorite chair when she came out of the bedroom wearing her faded blue coat and carrying an old canvas purse. He looked up from the newspaper, though Evelyn knew he had been staring at the same paragraph for 10 minutes. "You don't have to rush, Evie," he said. "The pharmacy's open all day." "I know," she replied, tucking the prescription into a paper envelope. "I'm not rushing." Raymond gave her the look he had perfected over 48 years of marriage, the one that said he knew perfectly well when she was lying and had decided to love her anyway. Evelyn slipped her bank book into the envelope, then added her driver's license, 2 utility bills, their latest tax statement, Raymond's veteran identification card, and a letter Northbridge Bank had mailed them 3 months earlier. She had always believed that when dealing with banks, doctors, or the government, it was better to bring too much paper than not enough. Raymond watched her stuff everything into the envelope and smiled faintly. "Planning to withdraw money or prove you're a citizen of 3 countries? Both," she said, because humor was the easiest way to keep fear from settling into the room. He reached for her hand before she left. His fingers were cool. "Evelyn, if it's too much trouble, we'll wait until next week." She tightened her grip. "We are not waiting a week for pain medicine. I'll be back before you have time to complain about the thermostat." "I never complain about the thermostat. You gave a 12-minute speech about it yesterday." "That was not a complaint. That was testimony." She laughed, kissed his forehead, and carried that little piece of laughter with her all the way to the car. The drive to downtown Maple Creek took 11 minutes. Evelyn had made it hundreds of times. She knew which traffic lights stayed red too long, where the pavement buckled near the old library, and which corner had the best view of the courthouse clock. Northbridge Community Bank stood across from a hardware store and a bakery that had been there since before Evelyn was born. The bank itself had changed. Years ago, it had been Maple Creek Savings and Loan, a place where the manager knew whose son had joined the Navy and which widow needed help carrying groceries to her car. Then it became Northbridge, then Northbridge Financial, then Northbridge Community Bank again, after a merger with a company from Chicago. Each new sign was shinier than the one before it, and each new employee seemed less likely to recognize Evelyn. She parked near the side entrance and checked the time. 2:14, more than 3 hours before Bellman's closed. She took a breath, picked up the envelope, and went inside. The first thing she noticed was how quiet the bank had become. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind of quiet filled with tapping keyboards, muted television screens, and people trying not to speak louder than necessary. The old wooden counters were gone. In their place stood glass partitions, silver signs, and a row of machines inviting customers to scan, tap, enter, verify, and confirm. Evelyn had never trusted machines that needed 6 instructions before they would let you do one thing. A woman in a navy suit stood near the entrance holding a tablet. "Welcome to Northbridge," she said without really looking up. "Are you checking into the app today?" Evelyn paused. "No, I was hoping to speak to a teller." The woman pointed toward a small screen on a stand. "You can enter your mobile number there. I don't have a mobile number connected to my account." The woman finally looked at her, then at the flip phone clipped inside Evelyn's purse. Her smile changed just slightly, not enough to call rude, but enough for Evelyn to feel it. "Just select guest services," she said. Evelyn tapped the screen with one finger. Nothing happened. She tapped again. A message appeared telling her to begin by scanning a code. She stared at the black square on the screen. The woman sighed quietly, reached over and pressed 2 buttons. A paper ticket slid out. B47. Evelyn took it. "Thank you." The woman was already looking past her. Evelyn sat beneath the television showing stock prices and waited. B42 was called, then B43. A little boy beside her was playing a game on a tablet, moving his fingers so quickly that Evelyn could not understand how he even saw what he was doing. His mother noticed Evelyn watching and smiled. "He's better with that thing than I am." Evelyn smiled back. "At this point, my toaster is better with technology than I am." The mother laughed, and for a moment Evelyn relaxed. Then she looked at the clock. 2:31. Still plenty of time. When B47 appeared on the screen, Evelyn approached the counter. The teller's nameplate read Tracy Hall. Tracy looked about 26, maybe younger, with narrow glasses, perfectly shaped eyebrows, and a small wireless earpiece tucked behind her hair. She was typing when Evelyn stopped in front of the glass. Evelyn waited. Tracy kept typing. After several seconds, Evelyn cleared her throat. "Excuse me." Tracy looked up. "How can I help you?" "I'd like to withdraw $620 from my savings account, please." Evelyn slid the bank book and her driver's license through the opening beneath the glass. Tracy looked at the book as if Evelyn had handed her a museum artifact. "Do you have the Northbridge mobile app?" "No, I don't have a smartphone." Tracy's fingers stopped above the keyboard. "Is your account digitally verified?" "I don't know what that means. I have my account book and identification. I've had the account since 1984. Tracy glanced at the computer. "We migrated all legacy savings accounts after the merger. Customers were notified that they needed to complete digital identity verification." Evelyn pulled out the letter she had brought. "Is this what you mean?" Tracy read it quickly. "This says your account was migrated, but it doesn't confirm digital verification. You'll need to sign into the app, upload a photo of your identification, and complete the facial recognition step." Evelyn blinked. "I don't have an app. I don't have a smartphone. You can download it from the App Store." "On what?" Tracy looked at the flip phone inside Evelyn's purse and exhaled through her nose. It was a tiny sound, almost nothing, but Evelyn heard it. She had spent enough years raising children and sitting through parent conferences to recognize impatience when it tried to dress itself up as professionalism. "Is there another way?" Evelyn asked. Tracy typed something. "You can call customer support and request manual verification." "How long does that take?" "Usually 3 to 5 business days." Evelyn stared at her. "I need the money today. My husband is sick. His pharmacy closes at 5:30. Tracy's expression softened for half a second, then hardened again as though sympathy might get her in trouble. "I'm sorry, but I can't access the account for withdrawal until the verification requirement is complete." Evelyn pushed her driver's license closer to the glass. "I'm standing right here. That's my photograph. I can answer any question you need." I brought our bills, tax statement, marriage certificate, and my husband's veteran card. Tracy gave a brief, humorless smile. Mrs. Bermanage. Carter, bringing more documents doesn't override the system. The words stung more than they should have. Maybe it was the way Tracy said more documents, like Evelyn had arrived dragging a wagon full of newspaper clippings. Maybe it was because Evelyn had spent her life believing preparation mattered. You have my signature on file, she said. You have 40 years of deposits. You mailed statements to my house last month. Tracy turned the computer screen slightly, not enough for Evelyn to see it. The account is flagged pending digital compliance. I cannot release funds. Evelyn felt her heartbeat quicken. Then get your manager, please. Tracy glanced toward a glass office at the back. The branch manager is in a regional meeting. I can ask the customer service supervisor, but she'll tell you the same thing. Ask her anyway. Tracy picked up the phone and spoke quietly. Evelyn looked at the clock. 2:46. Still time, she told herself. Plenty of time. Plenty of time. A woman named Laura came over, listened to Tracy for less than a minute, and repeated the same explanation with more polished language. Security requirements. Fraud prevention. Customer protection. Evelyn had heard enough. Protected from what, she asked. Laura paused. Excuse me, you keep saying this is for my protection. Who are you protecting me from? Myself? Laura folded her hands. Mrs. Carter, there's no need to become confrontational. I am not being confrontational. I am not being confrontational. My husband has cancer. His doctor changed his medication this morning, and I need $612 from an account with my name on it. I'm asking you to help me. A man standing at the next counter turned his head. Tracy's jaw tightened. Laura lowered her voice. Other customers can hear you. Good, Evelyn said before she could stop herself. Maybe one of them understands what you're saying, because I certainly don't. That was the moment the room changed. Evelyn felt it happen. A private problem had become a public inconvenience, and institutions did not like public inconvenience. Laura stepped back. Mrs. Carter, we are willing to help you complete the proper process. Then help me. I cannot wait 5 days. Laura's expression became cool. Raising your voice will not change the policy. Evelyn looked around, almost embarrassed enough to apologize. Though she had barely spoken above normal conversation, the man beside her was watching openly now. An older woman near the waiting area shook her head. Tracy returned Evelyn's bankbook and license through the opening. You can use the customer service phone near the lobby, she said. Evelyn did not pick them up. I've been a customer here longer than you've been alive. Tracy's face flushed. That doesn't exempt you from current banking regulations. I didn't ask to be exempt. I asked to withdraw my own money. Laura glanced toward the security desk. Evelyn saw it and felt something cold move through her stomach. Please don't do that, she said. Do what? Don't call security. I'm not threatening anyone. Laura's voice became carefully neutral. No one said you were threatening anyone. Then why are you looking at the guards? The tall guard, whose name tag read Will, had already started walking toward them. He looked uncomfortable. That almost made it worse. Ma'am, he said, let's step away from the counter for a minute. Evelyn gripped the edge of the counter. I'm not leaving without my money. Tracy spoke into the phone. Evelyn could not hear the words, but the second guard stood up. The older woman in the waiting area said, Oh, for heaven's sake, she's not robbing the place. Laura ignored her. Mrs. Carter, you're disrupting operations? Disrupting operations. Evelyn would remember that phrase for a long time. Her husband was at home trying to breathe through pain, and she was disrupting operations. Evelyn would remember that phrase for a long time. Her husband was at home trying to breathe through pain. She looked at Tracy, hoping to find some trace of the young woman behind the nameplate. Have you ever had someone waiting for you at home, she asked? Someone who needed you to come through for them? Tracy's expression flickered, but only for a moment. I am doing my job. So am I, Evelyn said. My job is taking care of my husband. Will reached the counter. Ma'am, please gather your things. Evelyn pulled the paper envelope toward her, but her hands had begun to shake. She hated that. She hated that her own body was betraying her in front of them, making her look confused and fragile when inside she was furious enough to tear the glass partition from the counter. She tried to slide the documents back into the envelope, but the torn edge caught on Raymond's prescription. The paper ripped, everything spilled. The prescription bottle rolled beneath a chair. Her driver's license skidded toward the entrance. Raymond's veteran card landed upside down. The old photograph of him in uniform spun across the marble and stopped near Tracy's shoe. For a second, nobody spoke. Evelyn stared at the photograph. Raymond had been 23 when it was taken, grinning beneath the summer sky, one arm around Evelyn's waist and his whole life still ahead of him. She had carried that picture through moves, births, funerals, layoffs, surgeries, and every hard season in between. Now it lay on a bank floor while a security guard waited to escort her outside. Evelyn bent down. Her knees protested. Will moved as if to help, then hesitated. The man at the next counter finally stepped forward and picked up the veteran card. "Here you go, ma'am," he said. His voice was gentle, which somehow made the tears come faster. "Thank you," Evelyn whispered. The older woman retrieved the photograph and handed it to her. "Your husband?" she asked. Evelyn nodded. "Vietnam? Was? 48 years married?" The woman looked toward Tracy. "Shameful," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Tracy looked down at her keyboard. Will gathered the remaining papers, but when he handed them back, his voice stayed official. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you need to leave the building." Evelyn stood with difficulty. She wanted to say something powerful. She wanted to tell them that policies did not have hearts, but people did, and people did not get to hide behind policies but not have hearts, but people did, and people did not get to hide behind policies forever. Instead, all she managed was, "My husband needs me." Will's expression softened. "I understand." "No," Evelyn said, looking him directly in the eye, "you don't." Then she walked out. The afternoon sunlight hit her so hard she had to stop beneath the awning. Behind her, the bank doors closed with a quiet hiss, sealing in the cold air, the polished floors, and every person who had watched her be removed. She made it as far as a wooden bench near the parking lot before her legs gave out. She sat with the torn envelope in her lap, trying to breathe. Cars passed on Main Street. Somewhere across the road, a delivery truck backed up with a cheerful beeping sound that felt almost insulting. Evelyn checked the time. 3:07, more than 2 hours before the pharmacy closed, but the time no longer felt generous. It felt like water leaking from a cracked glass. She took out her flip phone and called the customer service number printed on the bank letter. A recorded voice thanked her for being a valued Northbridge customer. Evelyn almost laughed. She pressed 1 for personal banking, 3 for account access, 2 for identity verification, then listened to music for 11 minutes before the call disconnected. She called again. This time a man named Eric answered and asked for her online banking username. "I don't have online banking." Then he asked for the 6-digit code sent to her mobile device. "My phone doesn't receive codes." He explained that without digital authentication, he could not discuss the account. Evelyn closed her eyes. "I'm calling from the phone number you have had on file since 2009. I'm holding my bank book. I was just inside the branch." Eric's voice remained calm and distant. "I understand your frustration." "No, you don't," Evelyn said. "My husband is waiting for medicine. I need someone to make a decision." Eric repeated that he was unable to override the system. The call ended at 3:28. Evelyn sat very still. She had always believed that if you followed the rules, kept your records, paid your bills, and treated people decently, the world would at least meet you halfway. It did not have to be kind, just reasonable. But reason had become a maze of screens, codes, and voices trained to sound sympathetic while saying no. She looked down at Raymond's photograph. He was smiling at her from a summer nearly 50 years gone. They had been broke then too, but being broke at 26 felt different. Back then, every problem seemed temporary. They had youth, work, and the stubborn belief that tomorrow would eventually improve. At 74, tomorrow had started feeling less like a promise and more like a limited supply. Evelyn remembered the year Raymond's factory closed. He had come home early, set his lunchbox on the kitchen table, and said, "Well, looks like I finally got that afternoon off I kept asking for." She had laughed until she realized he had been laid off. They survived by taking turns pretending not to be scared. She remembered when their daughter had pneumonia at 6, when their son crashed his first car, when Evelyn's mother moved in after a stroke. Raymond had never once made her face a hard thing alone. Now he was sitting in the house on Laurel Street, probably checking the clock, probably pretending the pain was not getting worse because he did not want her to worry. Evelyn pressed the photograph to her chest. "I am trying, Ray," she whispered. "I swear I am trying." A gust of wind lifted the top sheet from her lap. Evelyn reached for it, but it slipped from her fingers and skated across the pavement. Another followed, then the prescription itself flew beneath the bench and out toward the curb. Evelyn pushed herself up too quickly. Her left knee buckled, she caught the armrest, but the torn envelope fell, scattering documents across the sidewalk again. This time, the humiliation broke something in her. She sank back onto the bench and covered her face with both hands. She did not sob loudly. Evelyn had never been a loud crier. The tears simply came, warm and steady, slipping through her fingers while people entered and left the bank behind her. Some glanced over. One woman slowed, then kept walking. A man in a suit stepped around the electric bill near his shoe. Inside the bank, the older woman who had helped Evelyn stood at Tracy's counter demanding the branch manager's name. Tracy kept saying she could not discuss another customer's account. Will returned to the security desk, but he could not stop looking through the glass at the small figure on the bench. He had joined bank security after 22 years as a sheriff's deputy. He knew the difference between a threat and a frightened old woman. Still, he had followed procedure. That was what bothered him. Procedure had been easier than courage. Tracy busied herself with another customer, though her fingers struck the keys harder than before. Laura disappeared into the back office. Everyone had returned to work, but the room no longer felt normal. Outside, Evelyn leaned forward and reached for the prescription near the curb. Her fingers brushed it, but a passing car sent another gust across the pavement, pushing the paper farther away. She tried to stand again. Her knee failed, then a large black SUV turned into the parking lot. Evelyn barely noticed. The vehicle pulled into a space 3 rows away, and a tall man stepped out wearing dark jeans, a gray jacket, and a baseball cap pulled low. Even from a distance, he was impossible to miss. He stood well over 6.5 feet, with the broad shoulders and slow, balanced movement of someone who had spent half his life being watched. His name was Marcus Reed, though most people in Maple Creek knew him as the retired basketball star whose face still appeared in commercials during playoff season. Marcus had grown up 2 counties over, played 16 years in the professional league, won 2 championships, and returned to Ohio after retirement because, as he once told a reporter, he had already lived in enough cities where coffee cost $9. With him was his 17-year-old daughter, Nia, who had been talking about college applications until she saw Evelyn. "Dad," she said, stopping beside the SUV. Marcus followed her gaze. Evelyn was bent forward on the bench, one hand gripping the armrest, papers scattered around her feet. A prescription sheet trembled near the curb. 2 people walked past without stopping. Nia's voice changed. "Something's wrong." Marcus looked toward the bank, then back at Evelyn. He had come to Northbridge to meet with an advisor about funding new basketball courts at 3 local schools. The meeting could wait. He closed the car door and walked toward the bench. Nia reached the prescription first, catching it beneath her shoe before the wind carried it into the street. She picked it up and read only enough to see the patient's name and the words, "Urgent Pain Management." "Dad," she said quietly. Marcus slowed as he approached. His shadow fell across the papers, and Evelyn looked up, startled. For a moment she did not recognize him. She only saw a very large stranger standing between her and the afternoon sun. "Ma'am," Marcus said, his voice low and careful, "are you hurt?" Evelyn wiped her face quickly, embarrassed to be seen crying. "No, I'm fine." Marcus glanced at the documents on the ground. "With respect, you don't look fine." Nia crouched and began gathering the papers. Evelyn reached out. "Oh, you don't have to do that, Dad." "It's okay," Nia said. The wind's being rude. Evelyn gave a tiny, unwilling laugh. It was the first one since she had left home. Marcus sat on the far end of the bench, leaving space between them. That small choice mattered. He did not tower over her, did not demand an explanation, did not treat her tears like a problem to solve quickly. He simply waited. Evelyn looked at him again, and recognition slowly appeared. "You're Marcus Reed." "Sometimes," he said. "Other times I'm just the guy my daughter makes carry everything." Nia held up the papers. "Because you're built like a moving company." Marcus smiled. Evelyn almost did too. Then she saw Raymond's prescription in Nia's hand, and the fear returned. Marcus noticed. "Is that for your husband?" Evelyn nodded. "Raymond. He has cancer. His doctor changed his medicine this morning. The pharmacy closes at 5:30. Marcus looked toward the bank doors. "What happened in there?" Evelyn hesitated. Shame is strange that way. Even after someone mistreats you, part of you still wants to protect them from the telling. She stared at the torn envelope. "They said I couldn't take money out because I don't have a smartphone." Marcus's face did not change, but his eyes did. Nia sat beside Evelyn. "You mean they wouldn't let you access your account?" "I've had that account since 1984. I brought everything. They said I needed an app. Then they said I was disrupting people. Then security walked me out." Marcus looked through the glass doors. Inside, Will was watching them. The guard quickly looked away. "Did anyone explain another way to verify you?" Marcus asked. "They gave me a phone number. I called. The man wanted a code sent to a phone that cannot receive codes. I suppose that's funny in a certain kind of way." Marcus did not laugh. "How much do you need?" $612. "I asked for $620 because Raymond likes those peppermint candies near the pharmacy register, though he claims he doesn't." Evelyn's voice cracked. "I know that sounds foolish." "It doesn't," Nia said. Marcus reached for his wallet. Evelyn immediately shook her head. "No, no, sir. I appreciate it, but I immediately shook her head. "No, sir. I appreciate it, but I am not asking you for money." Marcus paused. "I know. I could pay you back when the bank fixes this." Marcus slid the wallet back into his jacket. "Mrs. Carter, Evelyn Carter." "Mrs. Carter's." "Carter, I believe you." Evelyn looked at him, unsure what he meant. I believe that the account is yours. I believe your husband needs his medicine, and I believe you shouldn't have to borrow from a stranger to get money you've already earned. He picked up Raymond's veteran card and studied it. Your husband served 2 tours. Came home with a bad knee and an opinion about everything. Sounds like my uncle. Raymond would like a. Marcus handed the card back gently. How long have you been married? 48 years in October. Nia smiled. That's amazing. It's a long time to argue about where the good scissors belong. Marcus leaned forward, forearms on his knees, and looked at the bank entrance. He was quiet for several seconds. Evelyn could sense a decision forming before he spoke. What exactly did the teller say when you asked for the manager? Evelyn told him. She described Tracy's impatience, Laura's polished refusal, the security guards, the papers on the floor, and the phrase disrupting operations. With each detail, Marcus's jaw tightened, though his voice stayed calm. Nia took out her phone. Should I record? Marcus looked at Evelyn, not at his daughter. Only if Mrs. Carter is comfortable with it. Evelyn shook her head quickly. I don't want to be on the internet. Fair enough, Marcus said. Nia put the phone away. That surprised Evelyn. Everybody seemed to record everything now, but the girl had asked permission and accepted the answer. Marcus stood. When he rose to his full height, the afternoon seemed to rearrange itself around him. He held out one hand to Evelyn. Let's go get your money. Evelyn stared at his hand. They already threw me out. Then they can explain why. I don't want trouble. Mrs. Barrio. Carter, Marcus said, and there was something steady in his voice now, something that sounded less like anger and more like a door locking into place. Trouble already found you. All we're doing is walking back inside with it. Evelyn looked at the glass doors. Through them, she could see Tracy behind the counter, Laura near the hallway, and Will at the security desk. Her stomach tightened. She imagined those faces turning toward her again, imagined the whispering, the pity, the quiet judgment. I can't, she said. Marcus did not pull his hand away. You can. Nia moved to Evelyn's other side, and you won't be walking in alone this time. Evelyn looked down at Raymond's photograph, then at the prescription, then at the clock mounted above the bank entrance. 3:42, 1 hour and 48 minutes until Bellman's closed. She thought of Raymond sitting in his chair, pretending not to hurt. She thought of the teller saying the system would not allow it. She thought of 40 years of deposits, of every paycheck she and Raymond had stretched, every vacation they had skipped, every dollar they had saved for the day life finally asked more of them than they could comfortably give. This was that day. Evelyn placed her hand in Marcus's. His fingers closed around hers carefully, as though he understood that strength was not measured by how tightly you held something, but by how gently you could keep it from falling. He helped her to her feet. Nia gathered the documents into the canvas purse and tucked Raymond's photograph safely inside. The three of them turned toward Northbridge Community Bank. Inside, Tracy looked up first. The color drained from her face when she recognized Marcus Reed walking beside the woman security had removed 20 minutes earlier. Laura stepped out of the hallway and stopped cold. Will rose slowly from his chair. The conversations in the lobby faded one by one until the only sound was the soft hum of the air conditioning. Marcus reached for the door, held it open for Evelyn, and said quietly, "You first." Evelyn stepped across the threshold, lifted her chin, and walked toward the counter where they had told her she no longer had the right to her own money. Evelyn had expected the bank to feel colder when she walked back inside. But instead, it felt strangely warm, not comforting warm, more like the air in a room where too many people had stopped breathing at once. Tracy Hall sat behind the teller window with both hands resting flat beside her keyboard. Her face pale enough that the dark frames of her glasses looked almost black against her skin. Laura Bennett stood halfway between the counters in the back offices, holding a folder against her chest as though it might stop whatever was coming, and Will, the security guard who had escorted Evelyn out, remained beside his desk with an expression that seemed to say he had been hoping never to see this moment arrive. Marcus held the door until Nia stepped through, then let it close behind him with a soft hiss. Nobody said anything. Even the television above the waiting area seemed quieter, the financial reporter moving his mouth beneath a row of silent numbers while every customer in the lobby watched the three of them cross the marble floor. Evelyn felt the eyes first, then the old instinct to make herself smaller, to apologize for taking up space, to whisper that she did not mean to cause trouble. But Marcus walked beside her at an easy pace, not leading, not pushing, and somehow that kept her shoulders from folding inward. She'd spent 48 years beside Raymond, a man who never entered a room as though he needed permission, and she heard his voice in her mind now. Gentle but firm, Evie, if you're right, stand there long enough for them to notice. So she stood. Tracy was the first to speak. "Mrs. Carter," she said, and the sharpness from earlier had vanished, replaced by the careful tone people used when they realized a private mistake might soon become a public problem. Evelyn placed her torn paper envelope on the counter. "I would still like to withdraw $620 from my savings account." Tracy glanced at Marcus. He was not smiling. "Sir," she began, "if you're here on Mrs. Carter's behalf, federal privacy laws prevent us from discussing her account with a third party." Marcus nodded. "That's reasonable. I'm not asking you to discuss her account with me. I'm asking you to discuss her account with me. I'm asking you to discuss it with her or I'll stand here and watch how you treat her." A low murmur traveled through the lobby. Laura stepped forward. "Mr. Reed, I recognize you and I understand this situation may look upsetting, but our staff followed established security procedures." Marcus turned toward her. "Then this should be simple. Explain those procedures to Mrs. Carter again, slowly, and explain why they require an elderly woman with valid identification to leave the building without access to her own money." Laura's grip tightened around the folder. "I would be happy to speak with Mrs. Carter privately." Evelyn surprised herself by answering before Marcus could. "No." Laura looked at her. "Mrs. Carter, a private office would protect your personal information. My personal information was not what embarrassed me," Evelyn said. "You embarrassed me out here, in front of everybody. You can explain yourself out here, too." The older woman who had helped pick up Raymond's photograph gave a soft, approving hum from the waiting area. Tracy looked down. Laura glanced around the lobby and seemed to calculate how many customers were listening, how many phones might be recording, and how quickly a few minutes of bad judgment could travel beyond Maple Creek. Evelyn noticed the calculation and felt something inside her harden. 20 minutes earlier, Laura had looked at her as if she were a delay in the workday. Now she looked at Marcus as if he were a delay in the workday. Now she looked at Marcus as if he were a storm system approaching the building. It was not respect, Evelyn realized. It was fear of consequences. Marcus leaned one hand on the counter. "Let's start over. Mrs. Carter has a government-issued identification card, correct?" Tracy swallowed. "Yes. She has a savings book connected to the account." "Yes. She has a savings book connected to the account." "Yes. She has statements mailed to the address on file." "Yes. She is physically present and willing to answer security questions." "Yes." Marcus tilted his head. "To digital verification." Marcus let the answer sit there. "Digital verification." Marcus let the answer sit there. The little boy with the tablet had stopped playing and was watching now. His mother placed one hand on his shoulder but did not tell him to look away. Marcus spoke again. "What does digital verification prove that those documents do not?" Tracy glanced at Laura. Laura answered. "It confirms that the customer has enrolled through the bank's updated identity system after the merger." "That wasn't my question," Marcus said. "What does it prove?" Laura's voice tightened. "It provides another layer of fraud protection." "Another layer," Marcus repeated. "So not the only layer." Laura did not respond. Marcus looked toward Tracy. "Was there evidence of fraud on Mrs. Carter's account?" Tracy's eyes moved across his account. "I can't discuss account details." Evelyn placed her license on the counter. "You can tell me." Tracy hesitated again. "No. There was no evidence of suspicious activity." "Were there any unusual withdrawal requests?" Evelyn asked. "No." "Was my account frozen by a court, the tax department, or any law enforcement agency?" "No." "Did anyone report my bank book stolen?" "No." "Then why was I treated like a thief?" Tracy flinched. "I never called you a thief. You called security. Because you refused to leave the counter. Because you refused to give me my money." Tracy's face turned red. "I was following the system." There it was again. The system. A word that had no eyes to meet, no feelings to hurt, no home where a sick husband waited. Evelyn looked at Tracy for a long moment. She did not hate the young woman. That would have been easier. What she felt was sadder than hate. Tracy was young enough to be Evelyn's granddaughter. Yet she had already learned how to stop seeing the person in front of her when the computer said no. Marcus turned toward Laura. "Is there a branch manager here?" "I am the customer service supervisor." "That isn't what I asked." Laura's jaw tightened. "Our branch manager, Denise Whitaker, is in a regional compliance meeting and cannot be interrupted." Marcus took out his phone. "What's her full name again?" Laura blinked. "Why?" "I want to make sure I spell it correctly when I call the regional office." The lobby stirred. Laura stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Mr. Reed, there is no reason to escalate this unnecessarily." Evelyn gave a short, disbelieving laugh. Everybody looked at her. She shook her head. "I'm sorry. It's just interesting hearing the word unnecessarily from the woman who had security remove me for asking to access my savings." Laura's face stiffened. You raised your voice and disrupted other customers. The man who had picked up Raymond's veteran card spoke from 2 counters away. She didn't raise her voice until you kept talking to her like she was stupid. Laura turned. Sir, this matter doesn't involve you. It involved all of us when you made us watch it, he replied. A few people murmured their agreement. Will shifted his weight near the security desk. Marcus noticed him. You were the guard who escorted Mrs. Carter outside? Will looked toward Laura, then back at Marcus. Yes, sir. Did she threaten anyone? No. Did she attempt to enter a restricted area? No. Did she attempt to enter a restricted area? No. Did she damage property? No. Was she physically aggressive? No. Then why did you remove her? Will's mouth opened, but nothing came out immediately. Evelyn watched the conflict move across his face. He had the look of a man who had carried out an order and spent the next 20 minutes wishing he had asked more questions. Laura answered for him. Because I requested assistance with a disruptive customer. Marcus kept his eyes on Will. I asked him. Will glanced through the glass doors at the bench outside, then at Evelyn. Because my supervisor told me to. His voice was quiet, but it reached every corner of the bank. Marcus nodded once. Thank you for answering honestly. Laura turned on him. Will, that is an incomplete description of the incident. He looked at her. No, ma'am, it's the complete description. A silence followed, heavier than the first. Evelyn saw something change in Will's posture. He was still wearing the uniform, still standing beside the security desk, but he no longer looked like part of the furniture. Laura stared at him as if betrayal had come from the most inconvenient direction possible. Marcus returned his attention to the counter. What options exist for a customer who doesn't own a smartphone? Tracy licked her lips. Manual identity verification through customer support. 3 to 5 business days, Evelyn said. Or in-person review by a branch manager, Tracy added quietly. Laura's head snapped toward her. Tracy added quietly. Laura's head snapped toward her. Tracy, that process is reserved for exceptional circumstances. Evelyn held up Raymond's prescription. Does cancer count as exceptional? Tracy looked at the paper, then at Evelyn. And for the first time, there was no impatience in her face, only shame. I don't know. Marcus turned to Laura. Who decides? The branch manager. Then call her. She is unavailable. Call her anyway. Laura exhaled slowly. Mr. Reed, I don't believe you understand the pressure this branch is under. Marcus straightened. Then help me understand. Something in his tone changed. Until that moment, he had been controlled, even polite. But now the room heard the edge beneath the calm. Laura looked around and seemed to realize she had backed herself into a corner where silence would look worse than honesty. She held the folder tighter. 6 months ago, this branch processed a fraudulent withdrawal from a legacy account, she said. The customer was elderly, the identification looked legitimate, and the teller believed the person standing in front of her. The bank lost $84,000. The employee was terminated. Since then, every account transfer during the merger has required digital verification before withdrawal. We have been instructed that there are no exceptions without written approval. Evelyn listened. For the first time, Laura's fear made sense. It did not excuse what had happened, but it gave the cruelty a shape. Laura was not protecting a rule because she enjoyed power. She was protecting her job because she had watched someone else lose theirs. Marcus nodded slowly. That's important context. Laura's shoulders loosened by the smallest amount. Then you understand. I understand why you're cautious, Marcus said. I do not understand why your cautious became humiliation. Laura opened her mouth, but Marcus continued. You could have seated her in an office. You could have called the branch manager. You could have reviewed alternative identification, contacted the account address, asked security questions, or told her exactly what she needed to do. Instead, you called security because she was making the problem visible. Laura's eyes flashed. That is not fair, isn't it? You were afraid of approving the wrong customer, so you chose the safest option for yourself, not the safest option for her. Evelyn looked at Marcus. He had found the sentence she had been trying to form since she sat on the bench. Laura's face changed, not because she had been insulted, but because the words had landed close enough to the truth to hurt. Nia stood a few feet away, watching everything. She had not taken out her phone. Evelyn appreciated that more than she could explain. The story still belonged to the people living it, not to strangers scrolling past it. Tracy spoke softly. There is a secondary verification protocol. Laura turned toward her. Tracy, stop. The young teller's hands trembled, but she kept talking. We can compare the customer's signature with historical records. Verify 2 previous transaction amounts, confirm the mailing address, contact the phone number on file, and request approval from regional compliance. Laura's voice sharpened. That protocol was suspended after the fraud incident. It was restricted, Tracy said. Not suspended. I read the update last week. Laura stared at her. And who gave you permission to interpret compliance policy? Nobody. Tracy swallowed. But it exists. Marcus looked at Laura. Call regional compliance. She shook her head. Without the branch manager, they will not approve it. Then call the branch manager. She is in a compliance meeting. Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly. So the person who can approve an exception is currently sitting in a meeting with the people who can approve the exception. Laura did not answer. Evelyn checked the clock. 4:01. 99 minutes until the pharmacy closed. She felt the time moving again, sharp and immediate. Marcus saw her look. Mrs. Carter, how far is the pharmacy? 8 minutes without traffic. Nia took out her phone not to record this time, but to check directions. 12 minutes right now. Marcus looked at Laura. You have 15 minutes to find someone with authority. If you don't, I'm taking Mrs. Bloody. If you don't, I'm taking Mrs. Prine, someone with authority. Carter to the pharmacy, buying the medication, and helping her move every dollar in this bank tomorrow morning. Laura's mouth tightened. Is that a threat? No, Marcus said. That's customer service. A few people laughed, not loudly, but enough to break the tension. Evelyn did not laugh. She was watching the clock. Laura turned abruptly and walked toward the back offices. Tracy stared after her, then looked at Evelyn. I'm sorry, she said. The words came so quietly, Evelyn nearly missed them. Evelyn looked at her. For calling security? For all of it. Tracy removed her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. My grandmother gets confused with her phone. She calls me every time it asks for a password. I don't know why I didn't think of her when you were standing here, because I was standing here, Evelyn said. Tracy looked confused. Evelyn explained, your grandmother is a person to you. I was a problem. Tracy's eyes filled. Evelyn did not enjoy seeing it. She had wanted accountability, not destruction. She reached through the opening beneath the glass and slid the bank book toward Tracy. Then see me now. Tracy nodded. She opened the account record and began asking questions. Evelyn confirmed the address where she and Raymond had lived since 1983. She named the amount of their last pension deposit. She remembered the exact date they had transferred money to help their daughter repair a roof after a storm. Tracy pulled up a scanned signature card from 1984. The image appeared grainy and yellowed on the screen. Evelyn could not see it clearly, but Tracy stared for several seconds. Your signature hasn't changed much, she said. My handwriting got shakier, but I still make the E too large. Tracy almost smiled. She handed Evelyn a blank slip. Sign here. Evelyn signed. Tracy compared the two. They matched. Next, she called the landline number listed on the account. Evelyn's flip phone rang inside her purse. Tracy frowned. That's not a landline. We canceled it 3 years ago, Evelyn said. The bank asked for a replacement number. Tracy checked the record. The change was made in person at this branch. She looked toward the date. I processed it. Evelyn remembered then. Tracy had been new, nervous, and friendly that day. Her hair had been shorter. She had laughed because Evelyn wrote her pen inside an old recipe book and told Raymond nobody would ever search through recipes for cabbage soup. You helped me, Evelyn said. Tracy stared at the screen, then at her. I did. You told me your fiancé hated your cat. Tracy's lips parted. He still does. Then you know me. Tracy looked down, ashamed. I should have remembered everyone, Evelyn said. You just have to remember that everyone, Evelyn said. You just have to remember that everyone is someone. The man at the next counter turned away, blinking hard. Will looked at the floor. Marcus said nothing. He let the silence do the work. From the back office came the muffled sound of Laura speaking rapidly on the phone. A printer started, stopped, then started again. Evelyn checked the clock. 4:12. Nia leaned closer. Mrs. Carter, does the pharmacy know you're coming? I called this morning. You leaned closer. Mrs. Carter, does the pharmacy know you're coming? I called this morning. Neil held up her phone. Would you mind if I called them again? The number is on the prescription. Nia stepped aside and dialed. She spoke with someone named Marcy, explained that they were trying to resolve a bank issue, and asked if the pharmacy could stay open a few minutes late if necessary. Evelyn listened to one side of the conversation. Nia thanked the woman, then returned. They closed the registers at 5:30, but Marcy said she'll wait until 5:45. Evelyn felt air return to her lungs. Thank you. Nia shrugged. I didn't do much. Sometimes much is just the right small thing at the right time, Evelyn said. Marcus looked at his daughter with quiet pride. At 4:17, Laura returned. Her face was flushed, and the folder she had carried earlier was gone. Behind her walked a woman in a charcoal suit with silver-streaked hair, and the brisk stride of someone who had been interrupted but had not yet decided whether the interruption mattered. Laura introduced her. Mrs. Carter, this is Denise Whitaker, our branch manager. Denise's eyes moved from Evelyn to Marcus, then to the customers gathered throughout the lobby. I understand there has been a serious misunderstanding. Evelyn felt her patience narrow. No, ma'am. There has been a very clear understanding. Your employees understood the rule. I understood that my husband needed medicine, and they chose the rule. Denise's practiced expression faltered. I'd like to discuss this privately. Evelyn shook her head. Denise looked at Marcus. Mr. Marcus. Reed, I appreciate your concern, but this is a confidential banking matter. Marcus gestured toward Evelyn. Then speak to your customer. Denise inhaled slowly. Mrs. Carter, our restrictions were implemented after a significant fraud loss involving an account similar to yours. We regret that the policy caused inconvenience. Evelyn heard the word and almost lost her temper. Inconvenience? Denise's expression stayed smooth. I understand you are upset. My husband is in pain. Your employee called security. My documents were scattered on the floor. I sat outside trying to reach a department that demanded a code from a phone I don't own. That is not inconvenience. That is what happens when a company forgets a customer is a person. The older woman in the waiting area began to clap once, stopped, and folded her arms. Denise looked around the lobby. I can authorize a manual review, she said. But because of the amount and the account status, final approval must come from regional compliance. How long? Marcus asked. Denise glanced at the clock. If they respond immediately, 15 to 20 minutes. Evelyn pressed her lips together. It was not the answer she wanted, but it was movement. Do it, she said. Denise nodded to Tracy wanted, but it was movement. Do it, she said. Denise nodded to Tracy. Begin the verification file. Tracy turned to her computer. Denise started to walk away, but Marcus stopped her. One more thing. She turned. Was Mr. Carter removed because policy required it? Denise looked at Laura. Laura looked at Will. Will looked directly at Denise. No, he said. She was removed because Miss Bennett asked us to remove her. Denise's expression tightened. Laura stepped forward. She refused to leave the counter after being informed we could not process the transaction. Denise addressed Evelyn. Did you threaten any employee? No. Did you attempt to cross the counter or enter a restricted area? No. Denise turned back to Laura. To Laura. Then security should not have been called. Laura's face went pale. I believe the situation was escalating. Denise's voice cooled. It escalated because you escalated it. Laura stared at her, wounded. We were told there would be disciplinary action for any unauthorized transaction. And you thought the answer was to disciplinary action for any unauthorized transaction. And you thought the answer was to discipline the customer instead? Denise asked. The words cut through the room. Laura's composure finally cracked. You weren't here, she said. You were in another meeting telling us the branch couldn't afford one more compliance failure. You said if we lost another dollar, people would lose their jobs. Denise's mouth closed. Laura continued, her voice shaking now. Every week we get another policy, another update, another threat from regional. We have fewer employees, more customers, and systems that don't talk to each other. Tracy has been working through lunch for 9 days. I have customers screaming because the app locks them out, and I have management telling me not to make exceptions. So yes, when Mrs. Carter refused to leave, I called security because I was afraid of being the next person fired. The lobby went quiet again, but this silence was different. The villain had stepped out from behind the polished suit, and beneath it was a frightened, exhausted woman who had made a cruel decision because fear had made cruelty feel safer than judgment. Evelyn looked at Laura. Part of her wanted to stay angry. She had earned that anger. But she also understood what it meant to be afraid of losing the thing that kept your household standing. Understanding did not erase harm, though. That was the mistake people often made. They believed a reason became an excuse if it sounded sad enough. Evelyn spoke carefully. I am sorry you're afraid for your job. I truly am. But when fear tells you to push a weaker person down so you can stay standing, you have to decide what kind of person you want to be. Laura looked at her, eyes wet. Evelyn continued. I was afraid too. My husband was waiting for me. The difference is, you had power in this building and I didn't. Laura looked away. Marcus crossed his arms. That's the real issue, he said. Rules don't hurt everyone equally. The person behind the counter gets to go home and complain about a difficult day. The person on the other side might go home without medicine. Denise seemed to absorb the statement. Then she turned to Tracy. What do you need? Tracy listed the documents she had verified. Denise signed an internal form, then called regional compliance on speakerphone from the counter, so Evelyn could hear. A recorded message played. Denise entered an employee code, waited, and was transferred twice. The clock reached 4:27. Evelyn began counting the seconds between ring. A man named Gregory finally answered. Denise explained the situation in clipped, professional terms. Legacy account. Customer present. Government identification verified. Signature matched. Historical transactions confirmed. Medical urgency. Request for one-time withdrawal authorization. Gregory asked whether digital enrollment had been attempted. Denise said no compatible device was available. He asked whether the customer could purchase or borrow a smartphone. Marcus closed his eyes. Evelyn leaned toward the phone. Sir, this is Evelyn Carter, the customer. There was a pause. Mrs. Carter, for security reasons, I need to speak only with authorized bank personnel. Then stop asking questions about what I can buy, Evelyn said. Ask whether I am who I say I am. Denise covered the phone briefly, but Marcus shook his head. Let him hear her return to policy language. Denise interrupted. Gregory returned to policy language. Denise interrupted. Gregory, I am the branch manager. I have personally reviewed the documents. I am requesting authorization under Exceptional Verification Procedure 7B. Another pause. That procedure is strongly discouraged for merger accounts. Discouraged is not prohibited, Denise said. Laura looked at her, surprised. Gregory sighed. What is the withdrawal amount? $620. For medical expenses? Yes. Gregory asked for the account balance. Denise gave it. He asked whether there had been any changes to beneficiary information, mailing address, or contact details in the past 12 months. No. Any failed login attempts? No. Any reported identity compromise? No. Then why is this account flagged? Denise looked at the screen. It appears the digital enrollment was never completed. Gregory said nothing for several seconds. That should be a compliance reminder, not a withdrawal freeze. Tracy stopped typing. Laura stared at the phone. Denise's voice sharpened. Are you saying the restriction was applied incorrectly? I am saying the account code may have been mapped incorrectly during migration. Denise looked toward the monitor. Tracy began clicking through menus, then found a line buried beneath the account history. She read aloud, Restriction Level D4, Digital Access Pending, No Branch Withdrawal Permitted. Gregory asked for the migration date. Tracy gave it. Another pause followed, then the sound of rapid typing. Tracy gave it. Another pause followed, then the sound of rapid typing. Finally, Gregory spoke. That code was intended for accounts with unverified ownership records, not customers with complete branch documentation. It appears a batch of legacy accounts may have been assigned the wrong status during migration. Evelyn gripped the counter. A batch? How many people? Gregory did not answer her. Denise asked the question again. How many accounts were in that batch? I would need to run a report. An estimate, Gregory. Potentially several hundred. The room changed all over again. This was no longer one bad afternoon or one frightened supervisor. Hundreds of customers, many likely elderly, may have been locked behind the same digital wall without knowing it until they needed their money. Marcus looked at Denise. Still think this is a misunderstanding. Denise's face had gone still. Gregory cleared his throat over the phone. I am authorizing the withdrawal and escalating the migration issue to technical compliance. Denise wrote down the authorization number. Tracy entered it. The computer processed for several seconds, then displayed a green confirmation bar. Evelyn did not celebrate. Not yet. She watched Tracy count 6 $100 bills and 120. The bills made a soft snapping sound against the counter, ordinary and almost absurd after everything required to reach them. Tracy placed the money inside a new envelope and slid it through the opening. Evelyn touched the envelope but did not pick it up immediately. She looked at the clock. 4:38. Plenty of time now, maybe, if traffic cooperated. Her eyes filled, but she refused to let the tears fall. She was too tired to give the room any more of herself. Tracy whispered, I'm sorry. Evelyn picked up the envelope. Thank you for helping fix it. That isn't the same as saying what happened was all right. Tracy nodded. I know. Denise ended the call and faced Evelyn. Mrs. Evelyn to Mrs. Morite. Carter, on behalf of Northbridge, I apologize. We will reimburse any costs associated with this incident and review our procedures immediately. Evelyn slipped the envelope into her purse. Do not review what happened to me and call it finished. Find every person with that account code. Contact them before they come in desperate. Give them a way to verify themselves without buying a phone they don't need. Denise nodded slowly. You're right. Marcus added, and nobody in this branch should be punished for uncovering a system error. Denise looked at Laura and Tracy. That will be part of the review. Laura wiped one cheek quickly. Evelyn turned toward Will. He stood beside the security desk, shoulders heavy. He removed his name badge and held it in one hand. Denise noticed. What are you doing? Will looked at Evelyn. I should have helped you pick up those papers before I ever asked you to leave. I'm sorry. You placed the badge on the desk. Denise frowned. Will, don't make a decision in the middle of this. I'm not quitting, he said. I'm reminding myself this uniform doesn't make every order right. He pinned the badge back onto his shirt. The man who had helped Evelyn earlier gave a small nod. Marcus smiled for the first time since entering the bank. Evelyn turned toward the doors. She had her money, but the victory felt different from what she imagined. There was no music, no great speech, no villain dragged away in shame. There was no music, no great speech, no villain dragged away in shame. There were only tired people standing beneath fluorescent lights. realizing that a machine had made a mistake and human beings had made it crueler. Nia moved beside her. Ready. More than ready. As they walked toward the exit, the customers began to applaud. Evelyn stopped. The sound made her uncomfortable. She had not done anything heroic. She had needed money for medicine and refused to disappear quietly. Still, the applause grew. The older woman approached and squeezed her hand. "My husband died 3 years ago," she said. "I remember those pharmacy runs. You did right by yours." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Thank you." The man who had picked up Raymond's veteran card opened the door for her. Outside, the afternoon sun had softened. Marcus guided Evelyn toward the SUV while Nia called Bellman's to say they were on the way. They had just reached the vehicle when Denise rushed out of the bank. "Mrs. Carter," Evelyn turned. Denise held several printed pages in one hand. Her expression no longer looked polished or managerial. It looked frightened. "What is it?" Marcus asked. Denise glanced back at the glass doors, then at Evelyn. Tracy found something else in the account history. Evelyn felt the envelope of money suddenly grow heavy inside her purse. "What kind of something?" Denise lowered her voice. 3 weeks ago, someone accessed your account profile from a regional administrator terminal. They changed the digital status and attempted to add a new external transfer destination. The request failed because the account was restricted, but the user tried twice. Evelyn stared at her. "I don't understand." Denise looked at Marcus. "The incorrect restriction may not have been an accident. Someone may have locked Mrs. Carter out while trying to gain control of her account." The parking lot seemed to tilt beneath Evelyn's feet. Marcus's expression hardened. "Who accessed it?" Denise looked down at the printout. The employee credentials belonged to someone currently inside that bank. Denise kept her voice low, but there was no mistaking the fear behind it. "The credentials belong to Calvin Mercer," she said, "our regional systems liaison. He's been upstairs in the compliance meeting all afternoon." For 1 second, nobody moved. Not Evelyn, not Marcus, not Nia, not even the people visible through the bank's glass doors. And the ordinary sounds of downtown Maple Creek seemed to grow strangely sharp around them. Tires rolling over pavement, a shopping cart rattling near the bakery, the courthouse clock striking the quarter hour. Evelyn stared at the printed pages in Denise's hand, trying to fit the words into something she could understand. A systems liaison sounded like a man who fixed printers or told employees why their passwords needed 17 characters, not someone who could reach into a widow's savings account from behind a locked office door. "Are you saying he tried to steal our money?" she asked. Denise looked at the printout again. "I'm saying his employee account accessed your profile, changed the verification status, and attempted to connect an outside bank account. I don't yet know whether he personally entered the commands, whether his credentials were compromised, or how many other accounts were affected." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You said the credentials belong to someone inside the building. Is he still upstairs?" "Yes." "Does he know you found this?" "Not unless someone told him." "Then don't tell him," Marcus said. Denise looked toward the bank. "I need to contact corporate security and the police," Evelyn added. Denise hesitated. "We need to confirm what happened before making accusations." Evelyn felt something hot rise through the exhaustion in her chest. "Confirm it," she said, "but do not protect him while you do it. 20 minutes ago, your employees were comfortable calling security on me because I asked for my own money. You can make one phone call about someone who may have tried to take it." Denise's face tightened with shame. "You're right." She pulled out her phone and stepped a few feet away, speaking rapidly to someone at the regional security office. Marcus remained beside Evelyn, watching a bank entrance. Nia checked the time. 4:43. "Mrs. Carter," she said gently, "we need to go." Evelyn looked toward the doors, then toward the envelope in her purse. Part of her wanted to march back inside, climb the stairs, and look Calvin Mercer in the face. She wanted him to explain why he had chosen her account. Why he had decided that a 74-year-old woman with a flip phone would be easy to silence. Why he had nearly left Raymond without medicine so he could move numbers from one screen to another. But Raymond was still waiting, and that mattered more than seeing a guilty man cornered. Denise ended the call and returned. "Corporate security is locking Mr. Mercer's system access now. They asked me to keep him in the building without alarming him until investigators arrive. The local police have also been notified." Evelyn nodded toward the bank. "Then you should go." Denise looked surprised. "You don't want to stay?" "My husband needs me more than your investigation does." Marcus opened the passenger door of the SUV. "That's the right call." Denise handed Evelyn a business card with a number written on the back. "This is my personal cell. I will contact you tonight with an update. And Mrs. Carter, I give you my word, we are going to find out exactly what happened." Evelyn looked at the card but did not take it immediately. Your word means more if nobody has to become famous before you keep it. Denise absorbed that without defending herself. Then she nodded. You're right about that too. Evelyn took the card and climbed into the SUV. Nia sat in the back and entered Bellman's pharmacy into the navigation system. Marcus slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot just as two police cruisers turned onto Main Street. Evelyn watched them through the side mirror. One cruiser stopped near the entrance while the other moved around to the back of the bank. Through the glass, she could see Will speaking to an officer. Tracy stood behind the counter, one hand over her mouth. Laura was nowhere in sight. Then the bank disappeared behind the hardware store, and Evelyn forced herself to look forward. Maple Creek traffic had never seemed especially serious until every red light stood between Raymond and the medicine in her purse. Marcus drove carefully but with purpose, changing lanes whenever delivery trucks slowed them down. Nia kept Bellman's on the phone. We're 9 minutes away, she told Marcy. Yes, she has the money. No, please don't close the register. Evelyn leaned back against the seat and held the envelope with both hands. Her body had begun to shake again, not from fear this time, but from everything releasing at once. Marcus glanced at her. You doing okay? Ask me when my husband has taken the first pill. Fair enough. After a moment, he said, for what it's worth, most people would have stayed to watch that man get arrested. Most people aren't married to Raymond. Marcus smiled. He must be something. He is stubborn, opinionated, and believes every household problem can be repaired with duct tape. Sounds perfect. He once fixed our washing machine with a shoelace and a spoon. Did it work? For 6 years. Marcus nodded respectfully. I already like him. Evelyn looked out the window. Storefronts passed in a blur. The anger was still there, but beneath it was something more unsettling. Calvin Mercer had not chosen her because of who she was. He had chosen her because of what he thought she was not. Not young, not digital, not connected, not likely to notice quickly, not likely to be believed when she did. That realization hurt in a way Tracy's impatience never could. It meant the humiliation of the counter had not been an unfortunate collision with a bad policy. It may have been part of the plan. Somebody had built a locked door and then the bank had blamed Evelyn for not knowing the code. At 4:54, Marcus pulled up outside Bellman's pharmacy. Nia was out of the SUV before the engine stopped. Evelyn followed more slowly, one hand gripping the door frame while Marcus came around to support her. The pharmacy lights were still on. Behind the glass, a woman in green scrubs waved urgently. Evelyn pushed through the door. Mrs. Carter? The woman called. I'm Marcy. We have Raymond's medication ready. Evelyn pushed through the door. Mrs. Carter? The woman called. I'm Marcy. We have Raymond's medication ready? Evelyn crossed the store as Crimmy knees aloud. Marcy placed a white paper bag on the counter and reviewed the instructions. But Evelyn heard only pieces. Take with food. Monitor dizziness. Call the physician if. She paid $612 in cash and received $8 in change. Then she noticed the bowl of peppermint candies near the register. After everything that afternoon had taken from her, the sight of those candies nearly made her laugh. She placed 2 on the counter. Marcy smiled. For Raymond? He claims he doesn't like them. Of course he does. They always do. Evelyn paid for the candy, tucked it into the medicine bag and pressed the bag against her chest. She closed her eyes for 1 second. She had it. That was all. No speech, no applause, just a paper bag containing relief. Marcus stood a few steps away, giving her the dignity of the moment without turning it into a performance. Nia wiped at one eye and pretended to study a display of cough drops. Evelyn opened her eyes and pretended to study a display of cough drops. Evelyn opened her. Thank you, she whispered. Marcy smiled. We just kept the door open. Evelyn looked back at Marcus and Nia. Sometimes that's everything. The drive to Laurel Street took 13 minutes. Raymond was visible through the front window before the SUV even stopped, sitting upright in his chair with the curtain pulled aside. Evelyn had called him from the pharmacy but had told him only that she had the medicine and was coming home. She had not mentioned the bank, the guards, Marcus Reed, attempted fraud, or the fact that half the town would probably know the story before dinner. One crisis at a time, she thought. Marcus parked by the curb. You want us to come in? He asked. Evelyn looked at the little house, at the porch Raymond had built with his own hands, at the flower bed they both kept promising to weed. Yes, she said. But I should warn you. He will pretend he recognizes you immediately and then ask which team you played for. Marcus laughed. I've had worse introductions. Evelyn opened the front door. I'm home, she called. Raymond tried to stand. Sit down, she said automatically. I've been sitting down all day. Then consider yourself an expert. She crossed the room and placed the pharmacy bag in his hands. Raymond looked at it, then at her face. You got it. I told you I would. His eyes moved toward Marcus, who filled most of the doorway, and Nia beside him. Raymond blinked once. Either the medication is stronger than Dr. Patel said, or Marcus Reed is standing in our living room. Marcus stepped forward and extended his hand. Mr. Carter, it's an honor. Raymond shook it. Which team did you play for? Evelyn looked at Marcus. I warned you, Brind, and named the 3 teams from his career. Raymond nodded as though checking an answer against memory. I remember you. Terrible free throws. Nia burst out laughing. Marcus placed one hand over his heart. Sir, I came here to help your wife and you attacked me in my first 30 seconds. Raymond's smile widened, then pain tightened his face. Evelyn saw it immediately. She helped him take the first dose, brought water, and sat beside him until his breathing eased. Marcus and Nia stayed quiet. The room softened around the 4 of them. Family photographs lined the wall. A clock ticked above the fireplace. On a side table sat an unfinished crossword puzzle with 3 answers written in Raymond's shaky handwriting. After several minutes, he looked at Evelyn again. What happened? She tried to give him the shortened version. The bank would not release the money. There was an account problem. Marcus helped me get it straightened out. Raymond looked from her to Marcus. That's not the whole story. We've been married too long for you to tell me the grocery store version. Evelyn sighed. She told him everything. Not every word, not yet, but enough. The app, the refusal, security, the papers on the floor, the bench outside, Marcus and Nia finding her, the confrontation, the system error, and the discovery that someone inside the bank had tried to attach another account to theirs. Raymond listened without interrupting, his hand tightening around hers. When she finished, the pain in his expression had nothing to do with cancer. They put their hands on you, he asked. The guard touched my elbow. He wasn't rough. That's not what I asked. Evelyn squeezed his fingers. I am home. The medicine is here. And they found the access attempt. Raymond turned toward Marcus. Thank you. His voice broke on the words. Marcus sat on the edge of the sofa, leaning forward so Raymond would not have to look up at him. Your wife did the hard part. I just made sure people stopped pretending not to hear her. Raymond looked at Evelyn with a pride so open it made her uncomfortable. She's been doing that to me for 48 years. Mostly about the thermostat, Evelyn said. The room laughed, and for the first time that day, the laughter did not feel like a shield. It felt real. Marcus and Nia stayed until Dr. Patel returned Evelyn's call and confirmed Raymond can begin the medication immediately. Before leaving, Nia asked Evelyn another question. Mrs. Carter, a few people at the bank were recording. This may end up online whether we post anything or not. Do you want us to say something if reporters call? Evelyn stared at the medicine bag on the table. I don't want people turning Raymond into a sad old man or me into some helpless grandmother. You weren't helpless, Nia said. I felt helpless. That's different. Marcus nodded. Then what do you want people to understand? Evelyn thought about Tracy's face when she finally recognized her. About Laura admitting that fear had made her cruel. About Denise discovering hundreds of accounts may have been flagged. And about Calvin Mercer sitting upstairs while strangers tried to keep Raymond from his own savings. Tell them this, she said. The problem was not that I couldn't use an app. The problem was not that I couldn't use an app. The problem was that everybody decided the app mattered more than I did. Nia repeated the sentence quietly, committing it to memory. Evelyn continued. And don't make your father the whole story. He helped me because he had influence, and I am grateful. But there were people inside that bank who knew what happened was wrong before he walked in. They whispered about it. They looked uncomfortable. They just didn't act. That's the part people should think about. Marcus gave a small nod. That's exactly the part. At 6:18, Denise called. Evelyn put the phone on speaker so Raymond could listen. Police and corporate investigators had detained Calvin Mercer in the upstairs conference room. When his access was disabled, he tried to leave through the rear stairwell, claiming he had a family emergency. An officer stopped him near the employee parking lot. His laptop and phone were being examined under the bank's internal fraud procedures, and investigators had discovered a list of legacy accounts stored in a private file. Evelyn's account number was on it. So were at least 183 others. Denise's voice shook as she explained that most belonged to customers over 65 who had never enrolled in online banking. Several had been assigned the same incorrect restriction code. 4 had pending external transfer requests. 2 small transfers had already gone through. How small? Raymond asked. $800 from one account and $1,200 from another. Evelyn felt sick. Small enough that people might blame themselves for forgetting, she said. Denise went silent. Yes, that's what investigators believe. Calvin had apparently been moving modest amounts to avoid automatic fraud alerts. He would mark an account as digitally restricted, attempt to attach an outside destination, then wait to see whether the customer complained. Accounts owned by people who visited branches infrequently were more valuable to him because the activity could remain unnoticed longer. Why? Evelyn asked. Denise hesitated. We don't have the full story yet. Preliminary information suggests he had significant personal debt and believed he could replace the money before anyone discovered it. Raymond made a bitter sound. Every thief thinks he is borrowing until someone catches him. Denise continued. Calvin helped manage the merger software. He knew which accounts had limited digital activity, and he knew branch employees had been warned not to override the restrictions. The policy made customers easier to turn away. Marcus's words returned to Evelyn. The person behind the counter gets to go home. The person on the other side might go home without medicine. Calvin had counted on exactly that. He had not needed to forge every identity. He had only needed the system to distrust the real owner. Denise promised the bank would contact every affected customer, restore missing funds, provide identity monitoring, and cooperate with law enforcement. Then her voice softened. Mrs. Carter, there is something else. What? Laura Bennett has been placed on administrative leave pending review of how you were treated. Tracy has submitted a written statement accepting responsibility for failing to use the alternative verification process. Will filed an incident report stating that he did not believe you posed a threat and should not have removed you. Evelyn looked at Raymond. His jaw tightened. Good, he said. Evelyn was not sure. Is Laura being fired? She asked. No decision has been made. Should she be? Denise asked unexpectedly. Evelyn frowned. That is not my decision. I understand, but your opinion will carry weight. Evelyn almost laughed at the irony. That morning, her identity had not carried enough weight to withdraw $600. Now her opinion might decide whether someone kept a job. She looked down at her hands. Laura humiliated me because she was afraid, she said. Fear explains it, but it doesn't erase it. She should face consequences. She should also be given the chance to understand what she did and prove she can do better. Raymond turned toward her. Evie. She looked at him. You disagree? He considered it. I want to, but no. You're probably right. Denise said she would include Evelyn's statement in the review. Before ending the call, she promised to visit the next morning with investigators and complete a full security check on the Carter's accounts. Evelyn thanked her, then added, Denise, do not call those people and send them to an automated number. Denise was quiet. We won't. Call them with a human being, Evelyn said. Someone who can answer a question without asking for a code first. I will make sure of it. After the call, Raymond took one of the peppermints from the pharmacy bag. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. I thought you didn't like those. Medicinal purposes, he said. Of course. By 8 that night, the first video from Northbridge Bank appeared online. It had been recorded by the man who helped Evelyn pick up Raymond's veteran card. The clip began after she returned with Marcus and showed only 6 minutes of the confrontation, Marcus asking what digital verification proved, Tracy admitting there was an alternative process, and Evelyn saying she had not asked for an exception, only access to her own money. The video did not show her crying outside. For that, she was grateful. By midnight, it had been shared more than 20,000 times. The comments split almost immediately. Some people praised Marcus for using his influence. Others said the bank employees had been right to follow fraud procedures. Hundreds shared stories about parents and grandparents locked out of accounts, insurance portals, medical records, airline bookings, and government services because they did not own the right device. A few accused Evelyn of causing a scene. One man wrote that anyone unable to use modern technology should give financial control to a younger relative. Raymond read that comment twice, then handed the phone to Evelyn. Can I respond? No. Why not? Because you still type with one finger and anger makes you misspell. I can spell idiot. That's exactly why you are not responding. Nia posted a short statement with Evelyn's permission. She did not include photographs of Raymond or details about his illness. She wrote that technology should expand access, not become a gate that excludes people who have spent their lives building the communities banks claim to serve. Then she included Evelyn's sentence. The problem was not that she couldn't use an app. The problem was that everybody decided the app mattered more than she did. By morning, the statement had spread beyond Maple Creek. Regional news crews parked across from Northbridge Bank. Corporate executives arrived before sunrise. The bank closed the branch for what it called an urgent systems review. Though everybody in town knew that meant lawyers, auditors, and people carrying boxes out through the back entrance. Calvin Mercer was arrested on charges related to unauthorized computer access, attempted theft, and financial fraud. Investigators later found that his debts came from a failed business investment and years of online gambling he had hidden from his family. He had begun with one small transfer, convinced himself he would repay it after a bonus, then built a process that made each theft easier than the last. In a recorded interview, he told investigators he had selected accounts that appeared inactive. That word reached Evelyn through Denise. Inactive. She looked around her house at Raymond's medication schedule, the laundry waiting to be folded, the pot of soup on the stove, the birthday card she needed to mail, the neighbor's cat she fed whenever it escaped, and she wondered what part of her life looked inactive from a computer screen. Calvin had not seen a marriage, a veteran, a woman racing to a pharmacy, or 40 years of careful saving. He had seen an account that did not click often enough. The bank's review uncovered 27 unauthorized access attempts and 6 completed transfers. Every customer was reimbursed. Northbridge also discovered that more than 900 legacy customers had received improper digital restriction codes during the merger, though most had not been targeted by Calvin. Some had simply stopped trying to use their accounts after being turned away. One 81-year-old man had kept cash in a coffee tin for 4 months because he believed his savings account was permanently frozen. A widow had borrowed money from her daughter rather than return to the branch after an employee told her she needed facial recognition. The scandal became larger than Calvin. He was the criminal, but the system had made room for him. 3 weeks later, Northbridge held a public meeting at the Maple Creek Community Center. Corporate leaders expected perhaps 50 people. Nearly 400 arrived. Folding chairs filled the gymnasium. Elderly customers sat beside young parents. Bank employees stood along the walls, and local reporters crowded near the back. Evelyn had not planned to speak. She'd come because Denise asked her and because Raymond, still weak but feeling better, insisted they attend together. Marcus and Nia sat in the second row, not on stage. That mattered to Evelyn. The bank's regional president gave a carefully prepared apology, announced new verification options, promised dedicated in-person support, and described an independent review of the merger system. The words were professional, expensive, and mostly correct. Still, the room remained restless. Then a man near the front asked the question everyone had been thinking. Would any of this have happened if Marcus Reed hadn't walked into that parking lot? The regional president paused too long. Evelyn saw Marcus look down. The man continued. Mrs. Carter was right before a celebrity noticed her. Why did she need one? Applause broke out. Not enthusiastic applause, but angry applause, the kind that demanded an answer. The regional president began talking about communication failures and escalation channels. A woman shouted, "She used the escalation channel. You threw her out." Denise sat near the stage, her face tense. Laura was not present. Tracy stood against the wall with her hands clasped. Will stood beside her in plain clothes. Evelyn felt Raymond touch her arm. "Go," he whispered. "Absolutely not. Evie, I am not giving a speech." "Good. Nobody wants a speech. Nobody wants a speech. Tell them the truth." She looked at him. "You always volunteer me for things you don't want to do. That's marriage." Before she could argue, Raymond raised his hand and pointed toward her. "My wife has something to say." Evelyn turned on him in disbelief as several hundred people looked their way. Raymond smiled innocently. "Terrible man," she muttered. She stood slowly. Marcus rose to offer support, but Evelyn shook her head. She walked to the front on her own. The regional president stepped aside from the microphone. Evelyn looked over the crowd. Her hands trembled. This time she let them. "My husband volunteered me," she began. "So please remember he is heavily medicated and cannot be trusted." The room laughed, including Raymond. The tension loosened. Evelyn took a breath. "I have heard a lot of people say Marcus Reed saved me that day. He did help me, and I will always be grateful to him and to Nia. But he should not have been necessary." The room became still. There were people in that bank who knew I was being treated badly. Some spoke up. Most did not. I understand why. People are afraid of making scenes, losing jobs, being wrong, or becoming the next person stares at. I was afraid too. I wanted to disappear before Marcus ever arrived. Then I remembered my husband was waiting for me, and disappearing was not an option. She looked toward Tracy. The young teller's eyes filled. Evelyn continued, "I do not think every employee in that building was cruel. I think some were tired, some were frightened, and some had been trained to trust a screen more than their own judgment. But when a system tells you not to see the person standing in front of you, your responsibility is not over. That is when it begins." A few people nodded. Evelyn turned toward the bank executives. "You say you are changing a policy. Good. But policies did not scatter my husband's papers across the floor. People did that. Policies did not watch me sit outside and cry. People did that too. And the person finally walked over and asked whether I was all right. So yes, change the computers, change the rules, and add all the help desks you want, but do not forget that kindness is also a procedure. It should be the first one." The room rose in a wave. Evelyn stepped back, startled by the applause. Raymond was standing despite her instructions, clapping with both hands and grinning like the young soldier in the photograph. Marcus applauded beside Nia. Denise wiped her eyes. Tracy covered her face for a moment, then forced herself to look up. The regional president waited until the room quieted, then announced that Northbridge would create a permanent customer advocate position in every branch, establish a non-digital access guarantee, and require a manager's review before security could remove a customer whose dispute involved account access. The bank also agreed to fund independent technology assistance programs at libraries and senior centers across the region. Evelyn appreciated the changes. She did not trust the polished announcement completely. But trust, she had learned, was not something a company restored with one microphone. It was something employees rebuilt one customer at a time. After the meeting, Tracy approached her. She was no longer wearing the narrow glasses from the bank. She held them in one hand. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "I don't expect you to forgive me." Evelyn studied her. "Are you still working there?" "Yes. Denise placed me on retraining and probation. I asked to stay." "Why?" Tracy looked toward the elderly customers leaving the gym. "Because leaving would let me tell myself I was better than what happened. Staying means I have to prove it." Evelyn nodded. "Then prove it." Tracy swallowed. "I will." Will came next. He had resigned from the private security company but had accepted a new position as the branch's customer safety coordinator, a job that allowed him to intervene before disputes became removals. He told Evelyn the title sounded ridiculous. She agreed. "But the work matters," she said. "That's why I took it." Denise approached last. Laura had been suspended for 2 weeks, demoted from supervisor, and required to complete customer advocacy training before returning. The decision had angered people on both sides. Some believed she should have been fired. Others thought the bank had made her a scapegoat for instructions that came from above. Laura herself had written Evelyn a letter, but had not asked to meet. Evelyn read it that evening. Laura did not excuse what she had done. She described the fraud incident 6 months earlier, the employee who lost her job, and the fear that had shaped every decision afterward. Then she wrote one sentence. Evelyn read 3 times. "I treated your vulnerability as a threat to my safety, and I am ashamed of that." Evelyn folded the letter and placed it beside the bank apology. Raymond asked whether she forgave Laura. "I don't know yet." Fair answer. "Do you?" Raymond thought about it. "I forgive her enough not to want revenge. I don't forgive her enough to forget." Evelyn leaned her head against his shoulder. "That sounds about right." In the following months, Raymond's health did not suddenly become perfect. Real life rarely rewards people with miracles just because they endured a dramatic afternoon. Some days the new medicine helped. Some days it did not. There were doctor visits, insurance calls, sleepless nights, and mornings when Evelyn stood in the kitchen feeling older than she had the day before. But there were also quiet breakfasts, peppermint candies hidden in Raymond's cardigan, and arguments about the thermostat that slowly returned as his strength improved. Marcus and Nia visited several times. Marcus brought groceries on the first visit and a new smartphone on the second. Evelyn stared at the box. "Is this a joke?" "A little," he admitted. "I am not using facial recognition." "Nobody asked you to." Nia taught Evelyn how to make video calls, enlarge text, and send photographs. Evelyn learned slowly, complained loudly, and accidentally sent Marcus 14 pictures of her kitchen ceiling. He saved one as her contact photo. She still kept the flip phone in a drawer, not because she needed it, but because it reminded her that learning something new should be a choice, not a price of admission to her own life. Northbridge returned the Carters' account to normal, waived their fees, and offered financial compensation. Evelyn accepted reimbursement for her direct costs but declined a larger confidential settlement that required her not to discuss the incident. The bank's attorney seemed surprised. Evelyn was not. She had spent one afternoon being told silence was more convenient for everyone. She was not selling it back to them. Calvin Mercer eventually pleaded guilty to multiple fraud and computer access charges. At sentencing, his attorney described his debts, anxiety, failed business, and belief that he could repay the stolen money. Evelyn attended but did not speak. She watched his wife sit behind him with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. For the first time, Evelyn saw Calvin not as a shadow in an upstairs room, but as a tired, middle-aged man who had ruined several lives while trying to hide the ruins in his own. She felt anger, pity, and disgust at the same time. People often wanted justice to feel clean. It did not. Calvin had selected elderly customers because he believed they were unlikely to fight back. He deserved consequences. His family had not committed his crimes, yet they would live with those consequences too. When the judge sentenced him, Evelyn felt no pleasure. She felt only closure, and even that was incomplete. Outside the courthouse, a reporter asked whether she thought the sentence was fair. Evelyn looked at the camera. Fair would have been him never touching those accounts. Everything after that is repair. Then she walked away. Nearly a year after the day at the bank, Evelyn and Raymond sat together on the porch while evening light settled across Laurel Street. Raymond's hair had grown thinner and he moved slowly, but he was still there. That mattered more than anything. On the table between them sat 2 cups of tea, a bowl of peppermint candies, and Evelyn's smartphone displaying a message from Nia. Marcus had missed another charity free throw and Nia had sent the video as evidence. Raymond watched it twice. Still terrible, he said. Evelyn laughed. Across town, Northbridge Bank was closing for the day. A new sign near the entrance read, "No smartphone required. Ask us about in-person account access." Evelyn had seen it the week before. She did not know whether the sign represented real change or a company protecting its reputation. Probably both. People were complicated. Institutions were just people wearing matching policies. Raymond reached for her hand. "You know," he said, "if that bank hadn't treated you so badly, we never would have met Marcus." Evelyn looked at him. "That is not a reason to be grateful for being mistreated." "I didn't say grateful. I'm looking for a silver lining. Try the candy bowl." He took one. Evelyn watched the neighborhood settle into evening, porch lights turning on, a dog barking 2 houses down, somebody mowing a lawn later than any reasonable person should. She thought about the question from the community meeting. Would anything have changed if Marcus Reed had not appeared? The honest answer was probably no. Evelyn might have borrowed the medicine money from a neighbor or missed the pharmacy closing, or returned to the bank days later after manual verification. Calvin might have transferred their savings. Hundreds of other customers might have remained locked out. A famous man had forced the bank to listen, and that was both comforting and deeply troubling. Justice should not depend on who happens to park nearby. Kindness should not require an audience. Courage should not arrive only after somebody important walks into the room. Evelyn squeezed Raymond's hand and looked toward the fading sky. The story people told afterward was simple. An elderly woman was denied her money, a basketball star stepped in, a criminal was exposed, and the bank changed its rules. But Evelyn knew the truth was messier. Tracy had failed her and then helped uncover the fraud. Laura had abused her authority and had also been crushed by fear from higher management. Denise had defended the institution before choosing to challenge it. Will had followed an order, regretted it, and changed the work he wanted to do. Marcus had used fame for something good, but his fame should never have been required. Even Calvin had started by telling himself a lie many people tell, that one wrong decision can be repaired before it becomes part of who you are. The difference was that his lie had reached into the lives of strangers. Maybe justice was not about finding one villain and one hero. Maybe it was about recognizing the exact moment when fear, convenience, or obedience asked you to ignore another human being, then deciding not to. And that is where Evelyn's story leaves us, not with an easy answer, but with a question. Should Laura have lost her job for calling security, or did the bank owe her a chance to change after creating the fear that drove her decision? Was Marcus right to threaten public exposure, or did his celebrity give him power ordinary customers should not need? And when security policies protect institutions by excluding elderly customers, who should carry the blame? The employee, the executives, the technology, or all of them? Tell us what you believe in the comments, because this argument is bigger than one bank and one family. Share this story with someone who has ever been made to feel invisible by a system, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about ordinary people who refuse to disappear when the rules were used against them. Most importantly, the next time you see someone struggling while everyone else looks away, remember what changed Evelyn Carter's life. It was not a perfect policy or a powerful speech. It was one person stopping long enough to ask, "Are you okay?"